Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Lady Justice Talks, where curiosity meets law. Today we are going to be talking about being linguistically legal.
Chantel.
And we're going to start off the episode today by introducing our co-hosts.
Olivia.
Sanzala.
Amazing. To begin, could you guys introduce yourselves a little bit and talk about your positions within WILA?
Absolutely. So my name is Sanzala, and I'm a third-year Law and Society student, and I'm an executive events coordinator.
My name is Olivia. I'm a first-year representative at WILA, and happy to be here.
Yay! So are you guys familiar with the term legalese? Yeah?
Yeah. I've heard of it. I don't use it, obviously. But yeah.
Cute.
Yeah. So I had a class, second year of university. It was literally just called Language and the Law, and it was basically just all based off of legalese, and we just learned about the repercussions and how it was formed and like what kind of values it upholds. So I'm really interested. I'm really excited.
I've never really heard of the term before. What is legalese?
So legalese is a term that kind of encompasses legal jargon and, like all those Latin terms that are hard for ordinary people to understand, which actually creates accessibility issues for people within like the legal field, accessing justice, etc. And it really is just determined by the amount of access to resources you hold within society.
Yeah, awesome. So my question for you guys is, can legal jargon act as a barrier to justice? And if you guys think so, how might it disproportionately impact non-native English speakers?
Just from what I heard from the explanation, it sounds like it could really become a barrier to someone in an English-speaking country who isn't maybe native to English and is trying to seek justice or trying to access law resources. When you're hearing these words that are kind of nuanced, how can you now get what you need when everybody's telling you some things that you literally do not understand?
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree with that. So basically, like being like linguistically legal, so when people come to the country and it's Canadian speaking, I feel like you're totally like expected to know like the rules of the law and like all the expectations that come with it, but if you don't really understand it, how does that like disproportionately affect someone?
Yeah, like the fact that you're always expected to understand law completely, especially like it's something that can like lead you to like a negative situation, right? So like, have you ever felt intimidated by like the use of legal jargon in like legal spaces or even like social or academic settings?
Absolutely. So within that class again that I mentioned earlier, Language and the Law, we did have an assignment where we had to go into a courthouse so we could examine exactly how language comes into play within the law. And there were a lot of terms that I didn't understand, as a Law and Society student, and I could only imagine how hard it would be for someone that is not familiar with the system, is in need of justice, to understand and access those resources. And another example I could think of that probably we could all relate is LinkedIn. Like I know a lot of terms on LinkedIn that are new, like unfamiliar to me. So yeah, it can really be intimidating for people.
Yeah, and especially how we rely on LinkedIn so much for like networking, like a career
even jobs
growth.
too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the fact that there's so many barriers to just even using the platform because of the way that people speak on it is so annoying. Yeah.
It does restrict the amount of people who could benefit from it for sure.
And who benefits from it, right?
Exactly.
That's another question to ask. As like future lawyers or future law professionals, I feel like we're really scared about this idea of professionalism, especially because it's expected in these legal spaces. How do you think professionalism is informed by like society stereotypes on race and gender?
So professionalism is a very Eurocentric concept. It also upholds male-dominated spheres, so it really privileges masculinity. For example, if a man is in the workspace and he just, knows what he wants, he's confident and he's trustworthy. But if it's a woman, she's aggressive and she's doing too much, stuff like that. Additionally, it's just like what is the norm, like what people have to conform to. Like, there is a certain way that like language and also like the way that you present yourself, like for example hair and makeup and clothes, like a lot of people, specifically minorities and racialized people, have to change those things about themselves to be accepted.
Yeah, just to add to that too, like I feel like kind of what you're saying, our like Western society is very like patriarchal, like defined, and you're kind of talking about how when a man like kind of knows what he wants, he's ambitious, and I feel like that's almost like something that to be praised about. And then when a woman does the same thing, it's just kind of like, ugh, why are you doing that? Like you're doing too much. So I often feel like too, in this kind of like state of professionalism, kind of like eccentric like clothing and things like that, and just kind of things that people would use traditionally in their everyday lives, it's like frowned upon in a professional setting because it's often seen as like too much.
I also believe, from what I've seen of professional environments in law, is that women have to come dressed very, very sophisticatedly, and there's a lot of expectation on how you look, like a lot of like makeup and like hair done, like you have to look good every single day, all the time. And I feel like there's not much room for like, of course it's a professional environment, so you have to wear professional clothing, but the expectation of how women should look are way higher than how men should look.
I agree. And it's like, also you can't be too feminine because then they won't take you seriously, but 100%. Also if like you can't hyper masculinize yourself like you guys said, because then you're gonna be described as like too much, or like
emotional or rude.
Exactly. Somehow like just because we're a different gender, the way that we like, if we were to act the same way as another male colleague, will be like viewed differently, right?
Yeah, I often feel like too, like even like traditional like parts of your religion and like your just basically where you come from, it's often frowned upon in the workplace, such as like your traditional pieces that you want to wear and things that you want to express your identity. That's not what is looked upon, just because that's like not what Western society values.
Yes. And then not to mention, going back to your point, Olivia, that unaccounted labor that goes into, you know, like being sophisticated for work. Like you do have to, as women, like we're expected to wake up earlier, like, you know, like just
to look better.
Yeah, just to
do
look
your
better,
hair,
just to be
do your
accepted.
makeup.
Just to have space.
And that takes time out of what we are working hours.
Exactly. It's not paid, it's unaccounted for. It's like unaccounted labor.
Unexpected at that, which is not fair.
Crazy. Well, my next question for you guys is, legal professionalism often values authoritative personalities and voices. So how does gender, accents, and linguistic differences influence who's seen as authoritative and who isn't?
I feel like where that's concerned, as men are like bred almost and taught as to at a young age, to be like very like strong and level-headed with no emotion. It works with the European, very male-centric idea of how you're supposed to be in the workplace, where women are supposed to be like more submissive and dominant and quiet. So when you're not supposed to talk, like you're not getting your voice across. But then like men, like it's expected that you are getting your voice across.
Like you can tell like the workspace is definitely catered to men, because like it has run in a patriarchal sense for years, and once women were allowed into the workforce, they didn't know how to like transition that, or maybe didn't even want to, right?
And now like you're expected to still be those same like 1950s like long time ago norms.
Like
You're
it's
still
2025, guys.
yeah.
Or 2026. Oh my goodness. Like let's get with the
2026.
program, right? I'm familiar with this term code switching. Are you guys familiar with the term code switching?
Yes.
All right. Does anyone want to define that, just in case for our viewers?
So code switching is basically how you speak and how you switch up the way you speak depending on your environment. Once again, it goes back to being accepted. Like you know in your head, I can't behave this way that I normally do because I won't be accepted in this sphere. I need to change this about myself.
And like what's interesting about code switching is that like it can be something that you're thinking about and like actively trying to do, but it can also be a subconscious thing. It's really, really interesting. How do you guys view code switching showing up in legal spaces, and like especially for people who are navigating like multicultural identities, or like multicultural or multilinguistic identities?
I feel like where that's concerned, from my experience, when you are faced with code switching situations, you know it's almost for the betterment of your acceptance in that space and for your advancement in that space that you conform to someone else, something else, or what is accepted. Do you know what I mean? Like, if I'm in a law environment and I'm one of the few black people or black women, I have to conform to what I see, because that's what will be accepted.
Yes.
Yeah.
I often feel like too, like once you like, for that example that you gave, Olivia, like once you're in a space with someone who is just like you, essentially, it's a lot more comfortable for you to actually not have to code switch, and basically you can just be accepted into that society.
Yeah.
But when, like you said, like there's so many different people involved that it's almost like a survival technique. So
Yes.
if you aren't exactly like how the people want you to be, then you're not gonna, there's like an assumption that you're not gonna go as far in the career force,
Yeah,
which
definitely.
obviously isn't true, but I think that's a major perception of that.
Yeah, that's how you're treated. That's how it's treated, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So then I guess it goes back into like almost survival
Mhm.
then, like because you do need to survive the workforce.
Yeah.
So it's all about like concealing certain things about yourself, and that's very prevalent in like the legal sphere and like courtrooms and like proceedings and everything, that we see that everywhere.
I feel like the neutrality of concealing isn't so much to look like everybody else, but to look more like the European.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
image.
It's almost
Yeah.
normalized at this point, just because it's so like instilled into everyday situations that we have, and like everyday roots of like all of our institutions and things like that, that is what the norm is. So basically, if you're out of that norm, you need to conform to that norm. And that kind of brings me to, in what ways can having an accent impact how an individual is perceived, judged, and treated in the legal setting?
I'd imagine accents to be very frowned upon, not only because like it shows that you aren't that European, depending on your
That
accent.
like idealistic,
Yeah.
right?
Like if it's a British accent, nobody cares. But if it's like Congolese accent, then it's like,
Mhm.
oh, like, do you even have the education to be here? You don't speak like us. So
Yeah,
your
no,
accent makes you
exactly.
sound stupid, even though you're not.
Yeah, 100%.
It's just perceived as such.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason why British accents, like you said, are perceived trustworthy. They're clever. They're posh,
smart,
you
yeah.
know. And there's a reason why, like, you know, like you said, like accents, you know, from the global south are not as respected. And I think that can also go back to media, how like they're perceived. Like, I think we're all familiar with how sometimes in the media, when they're showing countries from the global south, they'll put that strange yellow film over it to make it
Yes.
seem some type of way. They're conveying a message that kind of gets embedded within society, and it really does affect even spheres that you would never expect, like the legal system. It really does. Like, it goes into people's biases.
100%. I also feel like too, like even on the witness stand, if you have an accent, automatically you're kind of viewed to be as like you said, like not as trustworthy, not as convincing, just because of that accent. And I often feel like too, like because we've obviously been talking about like the Western society and that like patriarchal roles and how it's all embedded into the roots of our systems, that people just don't want to take the time to actually understand an accent and understand where it comes from and understand all the like the gains from having that accent and just basically like the historics behind it.
Right.
Exactly. And I feel like there's a difference between trying to understand someone's accent and genuinely not understanding and just being disrespectful.
Yes.
100%.
And a lot, like, on as much as that line is still a line, it's very blurry, and I think that we should always just be mindful of that. Yeah, we already talked about like how media and pop culture compounds on like the art, like on the stereotypes that exist. Like, how else does like the media and pop culture make us value certain accents and like stereotype negatively other accents?
I feel it also has to do with like what your accent and your country is known for, and therefore that's how you'll be taken.
So stereotypes
Yeah.
again, and
100%.
stereotypes enforced by the media.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So as we like used to see, I don't see it as much now. But when I was younger, you see always like these videos of these starving children from like literally the global south, as you mentioned before.
Yes.
And so when I was younger, I didn't know that that's not everybody from that region. I had to grow up and know that. But for those who haven't grown up to know that, you will see some of that accent and you would discredit them because like, how could you know this? How can you be here if you're supposed to be starving in the global south?
Yeah.
100%. I also feel like when I was a kid, like One Direction was of course super popular.
Yes,
So they
very.
were like the British, like basically like everyone wanted them. Like everyone wanted to be them, like everything like that. They kind of like emasculated like the whole pop culture. So if you were anything like not from that, it was frowned upon. Like even like Zayn Malik, I think that he has like Pakistani or Indian background, but they don't tell you that.
They demonized him for
Yeah,
it. Yeah,
for sure. My next question for you guys is, interpreters and translation services are often used as tools to kind of like break those language barriers that we experience. And how do you guys think that they encourage linguistic inclusivity in legal proceedings? And what do you guys think are the shortcomings?
From what I see and what I understand of like legal proceedings and like being with the police and whatnot and needing a translator or an interpreter, I feel like it kind of reduces the expectation to properly understand that person. Of course, we can't know every language and like sign language, like everything, but we can try to know more to be able to adapt to more people, especially if you're in a public-facing role. And with just the reliance on like translators to just get it done quickly.
I also feel like too, like a lot of times like they don't even like really employ real translators. They're just people who actually work in the systems who just have knowledge of that background or like have some information on
that's what I was
that.
gonna say. Yeah, like kind of just like a band-aid solution. Like here you go. Like here's a translator. Another thing is like also like you said, the qualifications. But on top of that, even with a qualified translator or interpreter, you could always get lost in translation, especially with like specific Latin terminology that may not be easily translated into other languages. It's like very easy to get lost in translation, cause confusion. So I would say that's definitely a very big shortcoming.
Yeah, I feel like it's basically like broken telephone essentially.
Yeah, that's
Literally.
Like
Yeah.
literally just like, I also feel like too that people, when they are given a translator, like I think Olivia was saying earlier, like they kind of already demonize them. They're just kind of already having those assumptions about that person. And I feel like they're very short, especially because they're like, I'm the translator, like you should be understanding me already, even though I feel like sometimes the translators don't know the whole language. So there's bits and pieces that they can make out, just like you said about that like broken telephone situation.
Yeah, and I feel like there's also something to know about how whatever this person is saying is going through a filter. So it's that person, the interpreter is interpreting what they're saying. So things like emotion can be lost, like direct translations are going to be lost, and they will never be able to fully convey what that person is saying.
Like even like the context of it. Like they could say, oh, like so and so did this, and people be like, oh, like why did they say that? Like that's kind of pointing towards them being suspicious, but in reality, that's not how they meant it to come across.
Yeah.
I agree. I feel like a really like a solution that I can see is like having translators where their first language is actually that language that they're translating.
Or even investing more money into that program.
For real.
Especially, I feel like it's a really big thing in airports. I'm not sure if anyone like sees those like airport security shows where like people come through and they have like things that they can't bring across.
Those, like, they have,
and
like,
they come up on my reels all the time, and they always like try and bring in a translator, but it's never someone who's actually working as a translator. It's someone who just works in the airport. But I feel like when you're going through things like that, you need to literally employ people that do that for a living, or just like actually put in a budget for it.
Genuinely. Or like I feel like I think we talked about certifications. Certifications are so like necessary, and I think that it shouldn't be a barrier to speak and like have your message being conveyed, and I think that it should just be expected for there to be translators in legal spaces and legal proceedings, right?
Like you would think if you're going to be held guilty for something, they're going to know at least what you're saying.
No, for real.
Yeah, and I feel like the evidence too that would be on it is like literally coming from the translator when everyone is like, oh, like what are you saying, and the person literally cannot convey what they're saying, what the situation was, or what they meant. So even like I feel like victims of violence and things like that too, like if they don't speak that language, then like Sanzala said, like it gets lost in total banana telephone.
Yeah, and then it goes back. Okay, now it goes back to everything. No, but it goes back to what
It's
we were
all
talking.
connected.
Everything
all
is
interconnected.
always connected. Yeah, no, but genuinely, if it goes back to this idea of like how convincing you are as a person. If you are reliant, quote unquote, on another person for your story to be heard, I think that you lose like the human aspect of talking between people.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and especially on a witness stage where the jury is like the proceeding is dependent on juries and their emotions and their interpretations of things, then it can definitely cloud their judgment.
Yeah, I also feel like too, like it's like no secret that when we actually do have juries, they aren't full of people with the same experiences of the person that maybe is the victim of the crime or even is the perpetrator of the crime. So when they see the situation, because there is that massive language barrier, even like a cultural barrier as well, like they don't really understand, like for an example, that could be like honor killings. Like they don't understand the experiences of that person because they don't care to.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's truly like something that's so embedded in our society, of that like we were talking about that like Western imaginacle of like who the perfect person is.
Yeah.
Right.
Like that Eurocentric view of it all.
Mhm.
So I'm assuming that we all like want a future as legal professionals. Is that true? It makes a lot of sense. We're in the Women in Law
Yes.
Association.
Yes.
I would hope to know that like we want to see our legal space evolve and change into
Yeah.
a more inclusive environment. How would you like to see our legal field evolve to be more inclusive for linguistic diversity?
I feel like where that's concerned, a lot of linguistic diversity comes from people who weren't born in this country or have parents who weren't born in this country. So having the sort of access, giving them access to participate in our legal system and to make it inclusive for those of their cultural backgrounds or linguistic backgrounds to also have like a common understanding and ground in our legal space can make it just more fair and just for everybody.
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and I think it can also just be traced back to like I had this really interesting reading earlier in the semester called "The Importance of Racialized Discussions Within the Law School Classroom," and it just kind of talks about how like ignoring this big problem can actually really detrimentally harm even law students, and it can cause them to like like do poorly in school and like and then but on the contrary, if you do talk about these uncomfortable topics properly and if they're properly handled, and like Charlie said, like if we allocate funds properly to like having these interpreters and everything, we can actually offer a solution to a really big problem in our justice system. And as a result, we can have culturally competent lawyering, like where lawyers can actually are able to handle their clients' complex needs, like, and it goes more than just handling a case. It's like like it's personal, which is what we need.
Yeah, I also feel like too, like you're saying, are like the people of power currently totally like reflect those like Western views.
Absolutely.
And that kind of like they're all white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Like
Yeah.
they don't really know anything because they can't really step into someone's shoes if you've never seen that perspective of someone.
Yeah.
So I feel like we need to, I don't know if we can elect someone or even like get someone to that position who does have like a racial background of having no linguistics within the legal system and kind of knowing, okay, like here's where our gaps are, here's where we need to improve, kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, well, I have another question to ask. What would you guys think about, like one of the language barriers that we currently face is to be a Supreme Court judge, you do need to speak both languages, English and French, which is a crucial aspect, of course, in understanding like how Canadian context and history matters within the law, but it can also create accessibility issues for people that, like English is their first language. So now if they are qualified, they now have to go through additional learning.
Yeah.
How do you guys feel about that?
I think it's reasonable in a sense for the
Yes.
sake of keeping our Quebec heritage like as a
Yes.
part of Canada, like making them inclusive. Like Quebec is very unique across North America. There's no
100%.
one else really like it. Not even like Louisiana. Like they're not even that French.
Yeah.
So like it's not fun to be excluded. So I'd imagine that like you need to have civil law. You need to have common law. I need to speak French. I get that, but to exclude people who don't, especially as you said, who don't even know English, or like a lot of First Nations peoples who
That's
live
a
on
big
residence.
one. Yes.
There was a lady, I think a Chief Justice, she got in our parliament. I think there was a big debacle about her.
Yeah, I think
not
she was
knowing
removed
French.
from the bench, I believe.
Right. Yeah, because she didn't know French, and she was a First Nations lady. And
Oh my goodness.
I honestly think too, like a lot of them should know like very basic like indigenous traditions,
100%.
indigenous
Or
words,
Yes.
just because even like talking about like the Gladu principles, like
Yeah.
that's also something that we don't effectively integrate
Yeah.
into our
Yeah.
systems.
Yeah.
So you can't exclude Quebec, but you can exclude the native people.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
talk
I mean,
about
you
guys.
can't pick and choose.
Yeah, if
yeah.
you're gonna
Yeah.
include everyone, you have to
No,
include
exactly.
everybody.
I also feel like too, it makes it so much harder for the people who have been honestly like born in Canada,
Yeah.
and English isn't their first language, and they've been raised at home with a different language, and then they come to school and have to learn English, and then they go through all the troubles of law school, and then they have a dream, and then it's just kind of like, you don't know French?
Sorry.
Nope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just feel like if you do want to become a Supreme Court judge, or and you do have to learn the language, I think that they should provide that training to you.
Absolutely.
And not even learn like the whole language. Obviously, like you said, it's very important for those ties to Quebec and kind of the French heritage that made up Canada. But I also think that it's not fair just to force that language onto someone else.
Yeah,
Like,
definitely.
it shouldn't be necessary right when you apply. I would say, like, during proceedings, I'm sure French is kind
Or
of
even
necessary.
like you have to allocate like maybe like 6 hours a week to French classes until you
Yeah.
actually learn it. Obviously, it's going to take a very long time, but it should be something. If someone's great and qualified for the job,
They could learn some
something like
French.
language shouldn't affect that.
Exactly.
I feel like like literally just make a little like make constituencies, like even if you don't understand it, we can teach you. Because this grade 1, grade 4 to 12 French. What's that one?
Yeah, I learned French all the way up until grade 10.
Yeah.
And then I went,
Nope.
Never mind. Like, for real, I was doing French until grade 12, and if you told me to have a conversation with a Quebecois, I don't think I could do that, folks. I'm sorry.
I wouldn't know a thing.
Bonjour.
Your French is very different.
It is also very different.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
went to immersion school, so French is like my second, third language. Like I speak it fluently, even when I hear them speak. I'm like, what is going on? Like, I
Right?
cannot understand them.
It's so interesting.
So even for someone that like has French as like almost a native language, it's still difficult for me. So that goes to show like how many barriers there truly are. So, you know, in reality, like an ideal person would be a white person born here, right? Because they would have access to French school, they would have access to all these things. So these barriers wouldn't even be barriers for them.
Exactly. Yeah.
It was designed for them.
yeah,
Exactly.
100%.
Well, thank you so much for all your answers. Did you guys have any other any questions or any comments that you wanted to bring up that you didn't have the chance to?
I'm okay.
Yeah, you guys are good.
Okay.
Okay, well, that
Perfect.
will conclude our episode of Lady Justice Talks, where curiosity meets law. We just wanted to thank our wonderful co-hosts just for being a part of our episode today. And yeah, so tune into the next episode of Lady Justice Talks. Bye.